Hi everyone, welcome back. So right here I have a database model of our tables in the database. So we're going to be modeling this out using Python code. I'm going to be using SQL Alchemy to model these tables out. So what we have is a user table as well as an order table. So let me go ahead and walk you guys through all these fields. So we have a user having an ID which is going to be their primary key, a username which is going to also be a unique identifier for each user, an email which will also be unique, a password, and is active boolean that's going to specify whether this user is active, and then is staff boolean that is going to show us whether this is a super user or not. We also have the order table that has an ID, a quantity, an order status, the pizza size, flavor, and the user ID. So the ID is going to be the primary key of this table. We also have the quantity, which is going to specify the number of pizza someone will be ordering. We have the order status. So the order status is going to be a list of choices. So we're going to have our choices being pending, in transit, and delivered. So the pending status is one in which the order has not yet maybe received, has not been received yet, and has not been worked on. So in transit, this is when the order is being delivered to the user, and when the order is delivered, then it has a status of delivered. So we also have the pizza size, which is also a list of choices. So this list of choices has a small pizza, a medium sized pizza, a large pizza, and an extra large pizza. So we are going to go ahead and implement this using SQL Alchemy. So if you're to notice, we also have the user ID field, and this user ID field is an integer. So right here, we see that this is a one-to-many relationship between the user table and an order. What this shows us is a user can have many orders. So we're going to see how to implement all this using SQL Alchemy. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is to install our SQL Alchemy. So I'm going to install SQL Alchemy as well as the database driver for PostgreSQL. So we're going to be using PostgreSQL in this video. So right here, I have the database that we're going to use, and I'm using pgadmin. So I created a database called Pizza Delivery. So the way you do that is by going to databases and then you say create, and then you specify the name of the database as well as the user who is going to be attached to that database. So since I've created my database, I'm going to uh, not create one. So I already have a database I've created called Pizza Delivery. So I'll just come to Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I'm going to do is to set up the simple configuration that's going to be for our specific database. I need to create a file called database.py. After creating the database.py file, let me first install SQL Alchemy. So I'm going to come to the terminal and make sure your virtual environment is already active. So I'll just come and say pip install. So I'm going to install SQL Alchemy. I'm going to install the database driver for PostgreSQL, which is this name that I can't read well. I'm also going to go ahead and install sqlalchemy utils. So sqlalchemy utils adds some utilities that are not on SQL Alchemy. So for example, you may have some fields that may not be present within SQL Alchemy, such as the choice fields that are going to help us to make lists of choices we would like a user to choose from. So to do this, I'm going to say SQL Alchemy. So this is going to be SQL Alchemy utils. And then this is going to install SQL Alchemy utils within our virtual environment. So after doing this, the next thing is going to be to set up our database. So the first thing I'm going to do is to declare our engine. So an engine is going to describe the database we're going to be using, as well as the different configurations that we're going to use for our database. So to do that, I'm going to import the create engine function from SQL Alchemy. I'm going to say from SQL Alchemy. So this is going to be from SQL Alchemy. I'm going to import the create engine function. So this is going to be create engine. After doing this, I'm going to create our engine variable. So the engine variable is going to be equal to create engine. And now after doing this, I'm going to specify which database we're going to be using. Now remember that I created my database here as pizza delivery. So I'm going to pass the connection string to that database as PostgreSQL. Then I'm going to specify the user of that database, which is Postgres. So in this case, the user is Postgres, so I can also provide the password. So I'm going to keep my password public, but feel free to use the couple or any other tool or environment variables to keep your password safe. So I'm going to say my password is that. Then I'm going to also provide uh, the host on which that database is on. So it's on localhost. So this is on localhost. Then I'm also going to specify the name of the database. So in this case, the database is pizza delivery. So this is delivery. And another important attribute I may add to this is going to be our echo statement. So echo is what will allow us to see the generated SQL in case we are to carry out a database transaction. So to do that, I'm going to say echo, I'm going to specify echo, and echo is going to be true in this case. So after doing this, I am going to simply fix this error by adding a comma here. And once this is done, I'm going to create our base class. So our base class is going to enable us to create our database models. So I'm going to import declarative base from sqlalchemy, but in this case we're going to import it from the ORM. I'm going to say from sqlalchemy dot ORM. I'm going to import, this is going to be declarative base. So I'll say it's going to be declarative base. And then after importing declarative base, I'm simply going to come right here, and what I'll do is to say that our base class is going to be equal to declarative base. So after doing this, the next thing I'm going to do is to create our session maker. So our session maker is going to help us to be able to create, read, and update and delete our resources of the API or our database. For example, if we want to delete, we will use sessions, which we are going to use to create via the session maker. So also import the session maker from sqlalchemy ORM. So it's going to be the session maker, and the session maker helps us to create instances of our session. So I'm just going to come here and create an instance of the session maker class. So in this case, we are going to say session is going to be equal to session maker, and I'm going to also leave it like that. Now after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and implement our models. So we're going to follow the schema that we showed. So right now we have our schema already shown to us. So I'm just going to be coding this in Python. So I'm going to come to our Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a file. So I'm going to create a new file, which I'm going to call models.py. After creating this models.py file, in here is where I'm going to write our database models. So to do that, I'm going to import our base class. So our base class is located within database. So right now it's easy. It's just from database import base. So I'm going to import the base class. And after importing the base class, we're going to create our models that are going to inherit from the base class. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to come right here, and I'm going to create a class. So the first class we're going to create is the user class. Our user class is going to inherit from this. The first thing we do if we are creating a table with SQL Alchemy is to specify the table name of that table. So the table name in this case is going to be, so this is going to be the table name, and this is going to be equal to user. So we're going to create this and call the table user. So if we're to look at our table, we see that each table has an ID. So we're going to specify the ID, the username, the string, the email, the password, and these other extra fields. So I'm going to come, and the first is going to be an ID. We're going to import the various fields that we're going to use. So I'm going to come and say from SQL Alchemy, I'm going to import the following fields. The first thing we're going to import is the column, which is going to indicate, sorry for this. So the column, so a column is going to indicate whether that is going to be a column. So next thing we're going to import is the integer. The next thing we shall also import is going to be, let's say, booleans, since we are having some booleans we're going to use. And then we're also going to import text. So we're also going to go ahead and import a string. So our string field. So I'm going to import string. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and write our user model. So the first thing I'm going to do is the column is going to be an integer. So the ID is going to be a column, which is going to contain an integer, and then it's going to be the primary key. So I'll specify our primary key equal to true. Now, after doing that, I'll come right in here, and the next thing is going to be our username. So the username will also be a column, which is going to be a string. So the beauty is we can also specify the number of digits or the fields or the number of characters you may want. So for example, you may say that the username is going to be 25 characters maximum. And then you can also specify that each username is going to be unique. So you can specify unique being equal to true. So the next thing we're going to do is for the email. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. There's not going to be a huge difference. I need to just copy and paste this. So I'll increase the length to, let's say, 80, and then we're going to have unique equal to true. So I'm going to come and as well create the extra field. So the next field is going to be a password. So in this case, I'll create the password. Then this password is going to be a column, which is going to be a string. So right here, we're going to actually, this is going to be text, since a password is going to be of a very large number of characters after hashing, because we won't have to save our password as plain text. So this is going to be text. So we can also say that it's not going to be now. So we should put a nullable constraint on here. So it's going to be nullable is equal to true. Then we also have boolean. So in this case, we're going to say is staff. So this is going to be a column, and then it's going to be a boolean. Then this boolean is going to have a default. So the default is going to be false. So not every user is going to be uh, an administrator or an admin or a super user of this app. So the next thing we're going to also specify is. So in this case is active. So is active. In this case, we're going to say column. So in this case, we're going to say this is going to be a boolean. Then we are going to specify our default as, let's say, false. So we only create this account and make it active when we created it. So after doing this, the next thing we're going to do is to basically create a simple function that's going to help us to return string representations of whatever objects we shall create from our class. So to do this, I'm going to come and say def, it's going to be str, it's going to actually be a repre, then we shall put in self. So what is going to basically return? It's going to just return an f string. So I'm going to create an f string. Then inside the f string, we shall return a user. And since we have unique username for every user of our application, we shall return a username. So sorry for that. I'll just come right here and then return self dot username. So we're going to go ahead and also implement our order. So since I say that we installed sqlalchemy utils, it's a package that's going to give us utilities such as the choice type that's going to help us to make use of choices. So let's go ahead and implement our choice table. So I need to come right here and create a class. So this class is going to be our choice class. It's going to also inherit from this. Now the first thing we do is to specify the table name. So I'll do the same, specify the table name. In this case, we're going to give this a table name of orders. And after calling these orders, the next thing we're going to do is to come and specify the various fields. So if I go back to our schema, we have an ID. So an ID is going to be very similar to this. I'll copy this and paste it. I'm going to fix this. After fixing it, I'm going to come and implement the quantity. So the quantity is going to be an integer field. So I'll say quantity is going to be a column, then it's going to be an integer. So in this case, we may say nullable. equal to false. So I'm also going to add the order status. So I'm going to create a tuple containing different choices. I'm going to come right in here within our choice class. Then I'm going to create the different order statuses. So I'm going to create a tuple called order statuses. This is going to be a tuple of choices. So right in here, we're going to have, going to go back to our schema, and now we have pending, in transit, and then delivered. So I'm going to come right here, and our first is going to be pending. So I'm going to call this pending. So pending is actually going to be pending. So when we choose when we add pending on our API, it will stand for the value of pending. Then the next thing we're going to do is to say this is going to be in transit, and then this is also going to be in transit. Then the next thing we're going to also do is to say delivered. So this is when the pizza has been delivered. Then this is also going to stand for the delivered status. So this is going to be delivered. After doing this, I am going to go ahead and create the choice field. So to do that, I'm going to use sqlalchemy-utils. I'm going to go at the top of our code, and from sqlalchemy-utils, so I'm going to install to import sqlalchemy-utils. So I say from sqlalchemy-utils, I'm going to import a special type for choices. So that type takes in a tuple choices and allows us to use choices on a specific field. So to do this, I'm going to say from sqlalchemy-utils.types, I'm going to import our, so this is going to be our choice type. So after importing our choice type, I'm going to go ahead and create that choice field. So let's see how we called it. We called it the order status. We need to come right here and create that order status field. So this is going to be order status, and this is going to be a, this column is going to have a type of choice type. So we're going to input the choice type, and then we're going to specify that choices. So the choices is going to be the order statuses that we created up here. So we're going to add the order statuses. Now, if you're kind of confused with this syntax, if you've ever used Django, whenever you create a choice field, it's going to be a virtual field or a char field that's going to have a choices attribute. Now, since SQL Alchemy does not ship this field, SQL Alchemy utils allow us to use the choice type to be able to declare a field that's going to allow us to make use of choices. I need to go right here. So this is going to be a comma, and then we can specify the default. So in this case, we can say that our default is going to be pending. So I can come right here and basically copy the pending status. So I'll copy this and then paste it right in here. So after doing that, I'm going to come to our, so I'm simply going to come within our schema again and look at the next field we are going to implement. So our next field is going to be uh, the pizza size. So I'm going to come to our Visual Studio Code and also create choices for pizza sizes. So I'm going to come right here. I'm going to call this pizza sizes. So these are going to be our pizza sizes. So it's also going to be a tuple containing various fields. So we have small. So this is going to be small. It's going to stand for small. And then also going to have a medium. So this is going to be a medium. And this will stand for medium. So this will be medium. We're also going to have, so in this case, we're going to have, let's say, a large. And then what we shall have as an option is also going to be large. After doing this, I'll also specify the extra large. So in this case, it's going to be extra. Actually, this is going to be extra large. And then this is going to be extra large. So after doing this, the next thing is going to be to come to our column. So I'm going to create a column and I'm going to call this pizza size. And then this is going to be a column. Then I'm going to specify that this is going to be a choice field. So I'll add the choice type. Then I'll specify choices are equal to, so in this case, the choices will be pizza sizes. Then I'll specify that the default pizza, if someone has not specified a type, is going to be small. Come and say default is going to be equal to small. So after doing this, I'm going to do the same thing to return a string representation of our pizza. So to do this, I'm just going to come right here. And what I'm going to do is to specify that default, in this case, actually our default is already small. So let's go ahead and implement the next field. I need to go to our schema. So we have a user ID, which is an integer and references the primary key of the table, which is our ID. So to do that, we need to come to our Visual Studio Code and we need to import a special field called the foreign key. So I'm going to import the foreign key field. So the foreign key field, and this foreign key field is simply going to make us generate a foreign key for our user within our, actually this is going to be the order table. So let me change this. So I'll come right here and start writing our user ID. So our user ID is going to be our user ID is going to be a column. Then this will be an integer. So it's going to be a foreign key to our table. So we're going to call this a foreign key, and it's going to be a foreign key to the user table. So we pass in the name of the user. So in this case, we're going to pass in user. So I'll just come right in here and then say user dot ID. I'm going to save this. So right now we've been able to create our fields. So when using SQL Alchemy, we can create relationships between tables. So for example, a user has many orders. So a user can create many orders. So we can also represent such relationships using Python code. So to do this, I'm going to import a special relationship attribute that's going to allow us to be able to attach relationships between users as well as orders. So I need to come right here. So I'm going to say from SQL Alchemy dot orm. I'm going to import the relationship. I'm going to say import relationship. And after importing relationship, I'm simply going to come and attach this so that you can be able to get the user or the specific user attached to an order as well as get the specific orders attached to a user. So let's do that. So I need to come right in here and I'm going to create a field called orders. So this is going to simply be a relationship. And it's going to be a relationship to orders. So the order table. So I'll just say order. Now we need to specify the backpopulates attribute. I need to come right here and say backpopulates. So this is going to be the user. So what this means is we can be able to access the order, the user who made a specific order. For example, we can get an order and then be able to say order.user. So we're also going to do the same thing on our table of orders. So just come right down here and be able to create that field. So right here, I'll call this user. And then user is also going to be a relationship. Sorry for this. So this is going to be a relationship to user table. And then we can be able to access user the orders for a specific user by specifying that back populates. In this case, sorry for this, will be here. So this will be back populates is going to be equal to. So right here, we shall specify the back populates is going to be equal to orders. So I'm going to save this. And right here, we see that we haven't created that function that's going to help us to be able to return string representations of objects we shall create from this class. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll def, then it's going to be danda repre. So I'll pass in self, then we shall simply return In this case, I'm going to use an f string, and then this is going to be order. So since we have the unique identifier as the ID, we shall just return the ID. So in this case, I'm going to say self dot ID. I'm going to save this. Now the next thing is to basically create our database. So hoping that everything is now working, we install the sqlalchemy, our database driver for Postgres. Now let's go ahead and see our database in action. So what I'm going to do is to create a simple file. So I'm going to create this file. I'm going to call it initdb.py. So initdb.py is going to make use of our engine as well as our different settings and our models to create this database in existence. So to do that, I'm going to first import the engine. So I'm going to say from database, I'm going to import engine, and I'm going to go ahead and also create the models that you want to create. So I'll also actually first import the base class. So I'm going to come and say it's going to be the base class. And the base class is going to be able to create our tables in the database. So also import the various models we've created. So I'll say from models, we're going to import user. So we're going to go ahead and import order. So after importing this, I'll come and do the following. So I'm going to say base dot metadata. So I'm going to access the metadata and then create form. And then we have to bind this to one engine, and the engine is going to specify which database we're going to create this one. So I'll come and say bind. It's going to be equal to engine. So hoping that everything is fine, I'm going to save this. When I save this, I'm going to open up the terminal. So our terminal is going to be cleared. So I'm going to clear it with Control L, and then I'm going to run our initdb.py to create our database. So once I run, hoping that everything is fine, let me actually go back to our database. So we also have echo is equal to true. If we create our database successfully, we shall be able to see the various schema of our database. So I'm going to come and say Python. This is going to be initdb.py. So if I run this, we now see that our database is being created. So we have the various SQL statements that are used to create our database. We have an ID, a username, an email, a password, a staff is active. We have our primary key as the ID, and we also have the order table, which has an ID, the quantity, the order status, user size, the user ID, and then the user ID being a key that references the ID of a user. So we've successfully created that table in the database. So let's verify. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Postgres. Now I'm going to go to our pizza delivery database. I'm going to go to schemas, then head over to tables. And within here, we see that we have orders as well as users. So in this video, we've been able to create our database models. Thank you for watching, guys. If you've liked this video, please go ahead and like. Please subscribe, as it's going to help this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next one. Bye.